Last week, North Korea announced that it will allow unfettered access to media outlets to view the dismantling of its nuclear test sites. And President Donald Trump announced the withdrawal of the United States from the International Iran Nuclear Agreement. Retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and current American International College professor Gary Lefort, who served in the Pentagon, joined me to offer his analysis.
On the surface, the initial reaction would be, oh, geez, why are we doing that? But closer scrutiny will make you recognize the fact that the international community, what they want is they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapons capability. And basically what we did in the Iran nuclear deal is just put that issue, kicked it down the road for about 10 years, saying at the end of the 10 years they could kind of resume their enrichment of uranium that's used in the making of nuclear weapons programs. There's also the concern that the deal just did not address missile technology, which is one of the tenets of having a nuclear weapons capability. It isn't just a matter of having a nuclear weapon, you've got to be able to deliver it as well. So when you look at problems like that, you look at the fact that you've got to give them 24-day advance notice of when an inspection is going to take place, just creates a deal that is not accomplishing what you wanted, and that is to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapons capability.
But our friends in Europe, so Britain, France, and Germany, not happy about the U.S. making this decision. You know, how does this affect relations with them?
Well, it could have far-reaching consequences because President Trump is saying that there will be a full economic sanction against Iran until such time that it stops or dismantles its nuclear weapons capability. And that has an indirect effect on countries around the world, not just Europe, because if you have business dealings with Iran, and it's in an area where there's an economic sanction, right, then you would be in violation of U.S. laws. And so that means if you're a company that's likewise doing business with the United States, you would not be able to continue to do business with the United States and Iran at the same time. And many European countries, especially after the Iran deal, started to negotiate contracts that are already been implemented or will be implemented in the foreseeable future.
Now, some of the leaders had said, you know, okay, this is a flawed deal. Was there any way to make this better, or was it better for the U.S. to walk away?
I think it was better for the United States to walk away. Because the deal in of itself just wasn't complete enough. Like I said, it didn't address the missile technology issue, which is very, very important. There has been indications that Iran might have had minor fractions of the current Iran deal, like the storage of hard water used in nuclear reactors. Right. And there was also the question that there was other areas of international concerns that weren't addressed and should have been addressed, like Iran sponsoring terrorism, you know, on at least a regional basis, and also extending its influence in other parts of the Middle East, as in the case of Syria and also Yemen.
So following this announcement, Iran's president said that the country will start enriching uranium again in the next few weeks or so. So does this make you concerned, or certainly makes others concerned, that this, you know, the withdrawal, you know, kind of upsets the whole premise of what was trying to be accomplished?
Well, again, it depends how you look at it. Many will argue the reason why Iran came to the negotiating table back in the 2013-2014 timeframe that led to the nuclear deal is that the economic sanctions that were imposed by the United Nations, the European Union, and the United States was having its effect on the economy. So with the United States now leaving the deal, if the international community will follow in step and again reapply those economic sanctions, I think we have a much better chance in the long run of getting Iran to come back to the negotiating table.
What does this mean for the region, though? And when you look at Israel?
I think the Middle East in general, countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, for example, Jordan, are probably, you know, very happy with Trump's decision, because they're very, very concerned about having a nuclear-capable Iran who has ambitions to have a regional influence, having that type of a capability. And so I think it would force them into developing their own nuclear weapons capability, which we don't want.
So Saudi Arabia has said that they will create a nuclear weapons program if Iran does. So now backing out of this deal and kind of seeing what Iran is going to do next, does this put that whole region in further turmoil?
I don't think so. I think the move that Trump's made has put a tremendous amount of pressure on Iran to reassess the situation, especially if President Trump can get the European countries to back him. And if they can put back in place the economic sanctions than before, I think that that will, in fact, bring Iran to the negotiating table again.
So we have also on the other side, we have North Korea. I mean, just major, major developments there with the president having a meeting planned for June. So talk a little bit about that.
I think it's a historical moment that, the United States and North Korea are willing to sit down and talk about the denuclearization of the peninsula. I guess the biggest concern that I would have is, well, what do you really mean by denuclearization? Does the U.S. know the true extent of their nuclear weapons capability, of their launch capability? If they only give away part of it because we don't know what that full capability is, then there is going to be some nuclear weapons left behind. And even though they're dismantling their hard sites, land-based sites, they still have a ground-based or a mobile-based operation that they've been developing over the years that gives them both a short and long-term capability. And so it's really important that at the end of the negotiations that we have, in fact, eliminated all nuclear weapons to include launch capabilities for North Korea.
But it's pretty incredible that now North Korea and South Korea are having conversations, right? I mean, this is unprecedented.
That's great. I mean, the reunification of the Korean Peninsula would be tremendous, considering that there's been an armistice in place since, I think, 1953.
So what role did China play in all of this?
I think China played a important role. China, has a vested interest, in seeing a nuclear-free peninsula. I think also as the hostility or exchange of words between President Trump and leader Kim Jong-un intensified, that it raised concern that there could be some type of a military confrontation between the two countries, maybe even possibly nuclear. And from China's perspective, that's not in their best interest, especially in terms of refugees coming into their country. If North Korea fell and was reunited with South Korea under a more democratic form of government, that would create a situation where the United States may be able to increase its presence in the peninsula even more than it currently has just in the south. And if I was China, I certainly would not want the United States on my back door.